Well, it wasn't when I got to 92 rental units. In fact, it was a lot smaller. Even at my dozen rental units that I had, I never recognized that all I had really done was create a job for myself.
Mm.
And one of the things when I'm coaching people, I talk to them about lines of complexity. And the lines of complexity, they creep in on you. You don't really realize that you've got a problem of infrastructure or process, like, when it's not running like a business, you don't recognize that until it's far too late. But the symptoms are almost always very, very clear, and I'll say that here in a second. But at 12 rental units, I had all these lines of complexity that I wasn't able to manage. Now you think, well, that's 12 lines of complexity, but it's actually not. It's actually far, far more than that. And I'll give you a quick example. So if I represent the owner of the property and you represent the resident, the line of complexity between us is one dot, right? So, or one line of complexity. So there's two dots, one line of complexity. If you add a third dot to that component, you have a line of complexity between me and each resident, and then one between the properties that represents the business. So there's actually three lines of complexity. So just by adding one dot, I've added two more lines of complexity. If I add a fourth dot, it goes to six lines of complexity, all the way around and then across. And it just gets exponentially more complex after that. So, you go to five dots, it's 10 lines of complexity and so forth and so on. So it continues to more than double as you continue to add these rental properties. And people who've gotten into this business will absolutely recognize this. It's not until you get to, like, it's not that three rental units is, twice as hard as two. It's, four is more, or is twice as hard as two. It's not. It's exponentially more complex, because once you start having problems, it seems like you can never get ahead of them. And that's the problem, is you never learn to manage those lines of complexity. So my biggest problem was, once I got to 20 rental units, I just started substituting my labor and my time for all the things that needed to be done, even if they were low end tasks, like taking the deposits to the bank and going and knocking on doors for collections and stuff like that. So I never stopped to recognize where the problems really were. And now, where you can always recognize this is what I was going to say earlier, but where you can almost always recognize when there's problems is in communication.
Mm.
So when communication lines start to break down, like, oh, I forgot to get back with this resident about their maintenance issue. I forgot to contact them about the missing rent. I forgot to, all these different things, or I forgot to return that email, forgot to pay that vendor. When those lines of communication break down, that's when you've got a problem with either infrastructure or process.